Hey ladies and gents, welcome back. This is going to be part 2 of What If Naruto Was the 10 Tails Jinchuriki. So, no like or anything like that, leave any comments below for any future what if ideas you'd like me to do. With that being said, let's just jump right into the what if where we left off, which was where Naruto basically had new seals placed on all of the different tailed beasts and the 10 tails in order to, or like Minato actually put them there because Naruto's was about to die kind of a thing, or not die, but lose control, so Minato ended up coming out and resealing all of the different tailed beasts, along with using the Reaper Death Seal to once again put a seal on the actual 10 tails, and linking all of those chakra paths together, so any future leaks would go directly to the 10 tails instead of creating another entity altogether like has happened before. So, with that being said, Naruto enters the academy, and those years would go pretty similar for him. He has a lot more physical power though, along with he can learn jutsu a lot easier because he has the Rinnegan and things like that, so Naruto actually graduates much closer to the top of the class than he does originally. But just for the sake of convenience, he does graduate at the same time, just so I don't have to completely change around the story or anything like that, which I did do in the last what if, but I didn't really want to again, because come on, you gotta have something that's not completely different, but not new, I don't know. Anyway, Naruto graduates with the, same people he did, the same class, but he does graduate at the top of his class rather than Sasuke being the Rookie of the Year. It is actually Naruto here because of his comprehension of jutsu and everything like that would be just much higher than anybody else's, along with his physical power being much greater as well because of the fact that he is the 10 Tails Jinchuriki. So, with that being said, Naruto graduates and is placed on the same team as he was in the original canon with Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura, and they all wait for their sensei to actually arrive, and eventually he does arrive and they go up to the roof to do their introductions. Now, Sasuke's and Sakura's would stay exactly the same, and Naruto's would actually be pretty similar here. He still just wants to become the Hokage because of the way I framed this what if, I guess you could say. It was so that Naruto would have a similar amount of hatred towards him, along with the fact that the 10 Tails, because of Minato's sealing jutsu, wouldn't have too heavily impacted how his childhood would have gone. So Naruto does end up on the same team, along with his goal actually being quite similar. He just wants to become the Hokage, so that's what actually happens with that. So Naruto would then be told not to eat anything the next day and to meet Kakashi in this area where they are going to be doing a bit of a test. So everybody does that. They don't eat in the morning and they show up. After waiting a few hours for Kakashi to arrive, he does so and explains to them the purpose of the bell test and that they have to take the bells before sunset. Naruto's okay then, I guess, and everybody goes and hides off into the forest, except for Naruto, who thinks he can just take on Kakashi, which, to be honest, he kinda can here. So, Naruto would begin fighting with Kakashi, and their taijutsu would actually be pretty similar at this point. Naruto is really young, but because of the 10 Tails, he actually is much stronger than he was, because he does pretty much have some of that, chakra always onto his base form, but it isn't a massive amount. That's why he's not much stronger than this, is because there is a seal placed on it, so how Naruto wasn't really that much stronger than anybody in the original until he was using Nine Tails chakra. That's kind of the similar concept here, except it's permanently infused into Naruto, so he is just stronger in general in his base, but he's not quite at a really powerful high level yet. So Naruto would continue fighting with Kakashi, and eventually Kakashi would whip out his Sharingan and begin using jutsu on Naruto, who would just copy the jutsu that Kakashi used and use them right back, and with Naruto's just absolutely massive chakra pool at this point, which would be even higher than in the original, and he would just copy all of Kakashi's jutsu using the Rinnegan, and all of them would just cancel each other out, kind of like a similar thing to what Kakashi did against Zabuza. However, Kakashi actually doesn't really have that surprise factor in it, because he already knows that that ability is a thing, because he's used it hundreds of probably thousands of times before, because he has thousands of different jutsu that he can use at his arsenal. So their fight would go on for a bit longer, and Naruto eventually decides to retreat and get more of a plan involved for this battle, because neither of them are really gaining any ground in this fight. Naruto would probably eventually win due to his higher superior stamina, but it wouldn't be before nightfall, and they wouldn't really be able to touch each other or do anything to each other before that point actually happened. So Naruto decides to retreat into the forest to regroup and get a plan going for what he plans on doing. He makes a few shadow clones, and each of them go to the location of Sasuke and Sakura, and they begin developing a plan to actually be able to beat Kakashi in just one move and get it over and done with. So, with this plan being actually formulated, the first one to come out into the clearing would actually be Naruto. This is actually a clone, but Kakashi wouldn't know that, or nobody would really know that at this point, would begin walking out of, the woods towards Kakashi and begin charging towards him, and they would quickly begin, going on to, a little bit of a taijutsu bout, which Kakashi would quickly win, actually managing to punch the clone, sending it into a cloud of smoke, which actually does surprise him, because he didn't know Naruto could even really use that jutsu. So Naruto then poofs out from pretty much, or not poofs out, but is behind the smoke and charging forward towards Kakashi now with a jutsu in his hand, which is actually the Chidori here. The Chidori would then proceed to pretty much almost go straight through Kakashi, who barely manages to dodge out of the way of it, slamming Naruto's hand down into the ground and pretty much burying him there for a second. And then this is where Sasuke would come out, using a fireball jutsu pretty much right on top of Naruto, because he has immunity to, ninjutsu and everything like that. So he just uses the jutsu right on top of Naruto, who is standing on Kakashi at this point, or Kakashi is standing on Naruto, but the fireball jutsu is launched towards Kakashi, and this actually does damage him a little bit, but it's not too much. But this is where Sakura comes out from beneath the ground and actually grabs the bells. Naruto pops out of the ground from rips his hand out of the ground from getting shoved down into the ground by Kakashi with the Chidori, and Kakashi congratulates them on passing, but tells Naruto not to use that specific jutsu on allies and only do it if he needs to actually kill somebody. But he doesn't tell him about any of its drawbacks. Because of Naruto having the Rinnegan, he wouldn't have that tunnel vision that it would actually give people, so he doesn't even figure it would be necessary to mention that, because Naruto already has a way around it because of his visual prowess. So after congratulating his new team on passing, they would proceed to do some D-rank missions, but just like in the original, they get bored of them and they beg to Hiruzen for a higher ranking one, who actually does eventually, cave in and give them a C-rank mission in order to guide a bridge builder named Tazuna, to build a bridge, is what, they're thinking, which is true, but they don't really know the full extent of the details of the mission. So, the mission would begin, and all of them would depart from the village with Tazuna, and they just kind of leave. And the first part would actually go pretty similar to how it does in the original. Naruto doesn't really have any experience here. He does have, the Rinnegan, so he'd be able to, see better, but I still don't think he would really care that there's a puddle on the ground there, and the same events would take place where Kakashi is seemingly killed, and Sasuke manages to jump on the hooks of the two, and then they are about to pretty much counter it, but Naruto jumps in, blocking one of them, sending him flying back into a tree with Kakashi jumping out and catching the other, dropping him also to the ground. They are then, placed in seals, and pretty much or not placed in seals, but they are restrained, I guess you could say, and they are questioned by Kakashi about exactly why they are here and what they were doing. They pretty much say nothing, because, they're ninja. That's kind of part of, the whole thing, isn't it? Not saying who is buying you or where you're from and everything like that, but Kakashi already knows pretty much everything he needs to, just by pretty much seeing what happened. And he then confronts Tazuna about it. why are these two legendary Chunin trying to kill you on a C rank mission when you're, supposedly not being hunted by anybody? And Tazuna then explains himself about the, why he needs to build the bridge and everything that is happening in his village with the gang leader. And Kakashi, hearing this, would ask his teammates if they want to proceed, who all agree to continue on the mission and just pretend like, it's still a C-rank mission and just keep going with it. He accepts this, knowing that they are pretty strong, especially Naruto, and decides to just continue on with the mission anyway, since at best it would be like a B-rank mission, and they should be fine to do it either way. They proceed to, continue going through until eventually they are about to make it to, where Tazuna's house actually is, and then a mist would roll over that is a lot thicker than what they are pretty much used to at this point, which is obviously Zabuza using his hidden mist jutsu in order to pretty much blind them and make it so that they can't see anything, because, that's what blinding people does. So this fight would continue, pretty much, and it would be pretty similar to canon, where Kakashi would eventually take out his Sharingan, but would get tricked and trapped inside of the water prison, making it so that his team has to save him. Naruto himself here goes out, makes a few shadow clones, and pretty easily incapacitates all of the different water clones that Zabuza had made before trying to go after the, actual Zabuza. And because of the fact that Naruto here is just as fast and strong as Kakashi, he would pretty easily make it so that Zabuza has to take at least one of his hands out, or not at least, but he has to take his hand outside of the water prison, which releases Kakashi, and makes it so that it is a 2v1, which Naruto and Kakashi would be winning pretty easily, until Haku comes out, pretends to kill Zabuza, but Naruto had actually seen Haku from the very beginning with his Rinnegan, and asks him why he was pretty much watching the fight from the start to see what kind of response he has to, what he could come up with. Now, Naruto would pretty much be listening, and Kakashi as well, as Haku tries to explain his way out of, hiding in the tree even after being a tracker ninja, because he didn't really want to have to do all the work, so he just kind of jumped out and, took the final blow so he could take the body and just leave. Now, this actually isn't too surprising of a story. It actually would have helped him a lot if he thought Zabuza was going to be too strong for him, and they decide to just let him go on his way, so he grabs Zabuza and, promptly leaves, allowing Naruto and Sasuke, Kakashi, Sakura, everybody to head over to Tazuna's house, where Kakashi that is such a weird way to say it. Kakashi actually ends up having to rest because of how much he actually used his Sharingan just now. Now, with him resting, everybody else would begin training with all the stuff that they had learned in the original, such as water, tree walking, and everything like that, which Naruto actually masters really quickly and is pretty easily able to, learn all these different things because of the fact that he has the Rinnegan, even if, some of the tailed beasts were trying to, disrupt his chakra flow. He, because of the fact that he has the Rinnegan, would be a lot better off than he was in the original, and actually be able to do it pretty quickly and pretty easily. So, now, what would the rest of his time be spent training for? Well, not only does he, really easily be able to master pretty much any jutsu, but Kakashi does wake up a little bit earlier than he does in the original to be able to help with training, just because he didn't have to fight quite as hard or take the Sharingan out for quite as long, because Naruto helped him with the fight when, he actually got freed from the water prison. Naruto stayed, and Kakashi was actually able to use the Sharingan for a, less period of time. So Kakashi would be training Naruto here, and this is where they discover Naruto's Rinnegan abilities, because Kakashi would know of the Mangekyo Sharingan and the Rinnegan and everything like that, and would know that it also probably comes with some sort of unique abilities that Naruto should have, and this is where they discover a few of the different abilities that the Rinnegan would have, and because of the fact that Naruto is an Uzumaki, this means that he can use these abilities to a great extent because of his vast amount of chakra that he has, especially considering the fact that he is a Jinchuriki as well. So Naruto discovers a few different abilities, one of which are the Truth-Seeking Orbs, which isn't a Renegon ability, but it's more of a Ten Tails ability, which Naruto was able to use over this time, along with the actual, like, push and pull factors of the Renegon, and Naruto can pretty much use any of those, like, paths abilities, I guess you could say, like summoning and all of those different kinds of things, because that's what Kakashi wanted Naruto to learn how to do, was master his, like, literal, like, natural power, I guess you could say, that he got from being the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails. So, Kakashi would, obviously Naruto got a lot stronger from this. Much, much, much stronger, and they proceed to the bridge after. And when Haku and Zabuza show up, and Naruto uses his abilities on them, he is absolutely going to thrash them. He uses the Chibaku Tensei, I believe it is called. It's the pull one. I can't remember. It doesn't really matter. He uses the Renegon pull ability, sending Haku towards him and creating a spike similar to what Pain does. And it just kind of goes straight through Haku. He drops down to the ground, and because Zabuza hasn't had his, like, big talk no jutsu moment yet, he doesn't really give that much of a shit. Naruto kills him as well, and Gato would arrive. He would, try to sick his goons on Naruto and the rest of his friends, but they wouldn't really do anything, and Naruto and everybody else would just kill him, and then they question Gato on exactly, like, what is happening here before he is quickly arrested, and the bridge is finished, named the Great Naruto Bridge, and they return to the village to pretty much give, like, the mission details of what happened to Hiruzen. But that is where I'm going to be leaving this part off. Stop back in for part 3 for Chunin exams and, yeah, whatever else we get into.